My name is Veronica Jenkins, and this is the story of how I died for 13 minutes and 45 seconds, and what I saw on the other side. I was 2 years old when I first learned what pain meant. My father, a high-ranking member of what many today would call an Illuminati-affiliated cult, believed children needed to be prepared for their role in the organization. What this really meant was systematic torture designed to fracture our developing minds into separate personalities that could be controlled. Our outward appearance was carefully maintained. My father held a respected position in the community, and our family attended a local Christian church every Sunday, a perfect cover for what happened behind closed doors. The irony wasn't lost on me, even as a child. In the morning, I'd hear about Jesus loving the little children, and by night, I'd be taken to underground rooms where robed figures chanted in ancient languages while children screamed. I was what they called an expendable child. My worth was measured only by how useful I could be to their rituals. If I died during one of their ceremonies, my father had contingency plans to cover it up. No one would come looking for the quiet girl with the haunted eyes. Despite everything, something miraculous happened during those early years. In the Sunday school classes that served as our cover, I heard about Jesus. I heard that he loved children, that he saw value in each person, and that there was a place called heaven where suffering would end. The moment I heard about Jesus at age 4, I fell in love with him. It wasn't an intellectual decision. It was like a drowning person grabbing onto a lifeline. In my darkest moments, when I was being hurt in ways no child should ever experience, I would feel a presence with me. Sometimes, during the worst abuse, I would dissociate so completely that it felt like I was floating above my body, watching from a safe distance. These out-of-body experiences became more frequent. I would find myself flying over treetops and houses, sometimes accompanied by beings I can only describe as angels. During these spiritual flights, there was no pain, no fear, only peace and the certainty that I was loved. By age 8, I had already experienced more horror than most adults could imagine. The cult used sophisticated mind control techniques, drugs, electric shocks, and psychological manipulation that created amnestic walls between my different personalities. This is why, to this day, there are gaps in my memory, blank spaces where my mind simply shut down to protect me. By the time I was 8, something had changed in me. Through a series of events, my family briefly escaped the cult's direct control and attended different churches associated with the Jesus movement in Southern California. There, I was baptized in the Holy Spirit and developed a deep hunger for Scripture. I read the Bible cover to cover multiple times, absorbing every word like my life depended on it. This spiritual awakening created problems during rituals. Once, while they were summoning demons during a ceremony, I suddenly broke free from the trance they had put me in. Standing up in the middle of their circle, I bound the demonic forces in Jesus' name. The adults froze like mannequins, and I was able to wake the other children. We ran and hid by the cars as the summoned entities turned on the cult members, attacking them violently. After that, they kept me away from the ritual circles. The Jesus in me was too powerful for their darkness. My father's position in the cult grew more powerful over the years. He was treated almost like a deity by the other members, though I never understood exactly why. There was something about his lineage that made him special to them, something that meant his bloodline was particularly valuable for their rituals. When I turned 12, the unthinkable happened. The cult had been preparing me with hormones and other treatments to make my body capable of pregnancy, despite still being a child myself. I was forcibly married in a mock ceremony to a teenage boy from the cult, and soon after, I became pregnant. 9 months later, I gave birth to a baby girl whom I named Lily in the privacy of my thoughts. She was taken from me immediately, and I was told she would be adopted by a family in the cult. 3 years later, at 15, I became pregnant again. This time, The programming was so effective that I didn't even realize what was happening to my body. I wrote baby names compulsively in my journals without understanding why. When the time came, labor was induced on the autumn equinox, a significant date in their dark calendar. The birth was difficult, and I nearly died bringing my son into the world. When he was born, the room erupted in cheers, not for the miracle of life, but because my father finally had what he needed, a perfect male child from his bloodline to sacrifice. For 3 months, my son lived in what they called specialized foster care. I was allowed no contact with him. Meanwhile, my father, who had always treated me with contempt, suddenly became attentive and kind. I now understand he was monitoring me to ensure I didn't remember giving birth. On Christmas Eve, when my baby was exactly 3 months old, the sacrifice took place. I was forced to watch. They restrained me, taped my eyes open, and made me witness every moment as my father took my baby's life in service to their dark god. They called him Samuel, the name I had secretly chosen for him in my heart. After the ritual, I was branded with a pentagram, a permanent mark of my role in their ceremony. Something in me died that night along with my son. A personality emerged that simply went numb. Dead mommy, as I later came to call her in therapy. This altar protected me by shutting down completely, closing off the memory of what happened so I could continue to function. When I was 16, my father tried to kill me. After my mother finally divorced him, I still had to take my younger sister for visitation. During one such visit, he put me in a chokehold, saying the voices were telling him to kill me. Thanks to my lifeguard training, I managed to break free and escape with my sister. 2 years later, when I graduated high school, my mother sold everything we owned. She and my 3 sisters bought a motorhome and disappeared into the back roads of America. We had no conscious understanding that we were escaping a cult. The programming was too thorough for that. We only knew our lives had been horrifically abnormal and that we needed to get away. For years, I lived with no memory of what had happened. The amnestic walls held firm. I went to college, got married, had 3 children, and became a 4th grade teacher. I also volunteered as a worship leader at an Assemblies of God church. From the outside, I looked like a success story, someone who had overcome a difficult childhood and built a good life. Then, at age 33, the walls came crashing down. Memories flooded back in technicolor detail. The rituals, the abuse, my children, the sacrifice. It was like drowning in horror. I sought help from a Christian therapist with a PhD who specialized in dissociative identity disorder, what used to be called multiple personality disorder. Over 3 years, I slowly integrated my fractured personalities and began to heal. During this time, I also experienced profound spiritual moments. In church one day, while singing a worship song about how suffering children are safe in God's arms, I had a vision of Jesus approaching me with Samuel in his arms. Jesus placed my 3-month-old son in my arms, and as we danced and turned in the spiritual realm, Samuel grew older before my eyes until he appeared to be about 23. The church leadership didn't understand what was happening to me, and eventually I was asked to leave. My marriage didn't survive the trauma of my recovered memories either, but through it all, I continued working as a teacher, trying to hold my life together for my 3 living children, who were 7, 10, and 12 at the time. On that fateful morning in April, I woke up feeling slightly off. There was a heaviness in my stomach that I attributed to stress. I had been dealing with the aftermath of my recovered memories while raising 3 children as a single mother. I forced myself out of bed, made breakfast for the kids, and drove to the elementary school where I taught 4th grade. My head was pounding by the time I arrived, but I pushed through, determined not to let my students down. During the morning reading session, the discomfort intensified. A wave of nausea swept over me, and the classroom began to spin. The last thing I remember is one of my students, Nicholas, asking if I was okay. Then everything went black. The moment I collapsed in front of my 4th grade class, I had no idea my seemingly ordinary morning would turn into the most profound experience of my life. I learned later that what I had experienced was severe food poisoning from some undercooked chicken I'd eaten the night before. The toxins had caused a dangerous drop in my blood pressure, leading to cardiac arrest. I was rushed to the hospital, medical staff fighting to save my life as I lay unconscious on a gurney. The first thing I noticed was the silence. One moment there was chaos, voices shouting, equipment beeping, someone crying, and the next, perfect quiet. The pain that had gripped my body vanished, replaced by a sensation of weightlessness. I opened my eyes, or at least it felt like I did, and realized I was looking down at myself. My body lay on the hospital bed, surrounded by medical staff performing CPR. A doctor was calling out orders, his face tense with concentration. A nurse was pushing epinephrine into my IV line. I'm dead, I thought, surprised by how calm I felt about this revelation. As a former lifeguard with first aid training, I could see that my body was in trouble. My skin had a bluish tint, and the monitor showed a flat line. Yet instead of fear, I felt curious and oddly peaceful. I noticed I could move simply by thinking about it. I drifted upward, passing through the ceiling as if it were made of mist. I could see through walls, observing the hospital corridors, filled with people going about their day, completely unaware that someone had just died one floor below. Looking down at my hands, I saw they were translucent but clearly mine. I wasn't wearing a hospital gown anymore, but seemed to be clothed in light. There was a sense of wholeness to my spiritual body, no pain from the old injuries that had plagued me for years. The neck that had been broken during cult rituals when I was 7, the hip fractures, the facial bones that looked like fractured glass on X-rays. All were perfect and whole in this form. I felt drawn upward, moving faster now. The hospital building fell away beneath me, becoming smaller until it was just one structure in a city grid. Then the city itself shrank to a pinpoint of light as I ascended higher. Around me, the atmosphere changed. The air, if you could call it that, became thicker, more vibrant with color and light. I was traveling through what seemed like a tunnel of swirling blues and purples, moving at incredible speed toward a brilliance that should have been blinding, but somehow wasn't painful to look at. The light grew larger, and I felt a presence all around me. A love so tangible, it seemed to have weight and substance. If I had to describe it, I would say it felt like being embraced by pure acceptance, like coming home after a lifetime of being homeless. The moment my spirit separated from my body was like nothing I could have imagined. There was no violent tearing, no painful ripping away, just a gentle release, as if I'd been wearing clothes that were too tight and finally slipped out of them. The heaviness of my physical form fell away, and I experienced a lightness that felt like my truest self emerging from a shell. Time seemed to operate differently, too. I could focus on a single moment and stretch it out, examining every detail, or I could zoom outward and observe multiple events simultaneously. In this in-between space, I became aware of other presences. Some seemed to be traveling as I was, moving toward the light that grew more brilliant ahead. Others appeared lost or confused, hovering in place as if uncertain which direction to take. A being of light approached me, neither male nor female, but somehow containing aspects of both. Its form was humanoid, but composed entirely of radiance that shifted and flowed like liquid gold. Veronica, it spoke, though not with audible words. The communication bypassed my ears and appeared directly in my consciousness. "Am I dead?" and I asked, surprised that I could speak without a physical body. "Your body has ceased functioning temporarily," the being explained. "You are in the transitional realm. I am here to guide you." "Guide me where?" "To the place prepared for this meeting. There is someone who has waited a very long time to see you." We moved again, faster than before. The tunnel of light expanded around us, revealing glimpses of other realms as we passed. We approached what appeared to be a vast garden. Plants of unearthly beauty grew everywhere, flowers that emitted music instead of fragrance, trees whose leaves shifted through colors unknown on Earth, grasses that responded to our presence by creating ripples of light that spread outward like waves. My guide paused at the entrance. "This is where I leave you for now. Follow the path." I looked down to see a pathway of what appeared to be living crystal, pulsing gently with inner light. It wound through the garden, disappearing around a bend ahead. As I followed the crystal path around a bend, I came to an open clearing. In the center stood a simple wooden bench beneath a tree unlike any I'd seen before. Its trunk was composed of what looked like living amber, with patterns flowing through it like blood through veins. Seated on the bench was a man. Even from a distance, I knew who he was. Every cell of my spiritual being recognized him instantly. The one I had called out to during the darkest moments of my life, the one whose presence had comforted me when nothing else could. Jesus. He looked up as I approached, and his smile contained such perfect love that I fell to my knees on the crystal path. Tears, not physical, but somehow more real than any I had ever shed on earth, flowed freely as I bowed my head. "Veronica," he said, and my name in his mouth sounded like the most beautiful music ever composed. "Come, sit with me." I raised my eyes to look at him directly. His appearance was both exactly what I would have expected and completely surprising. He looked Middle Eastern, with olive skin and dark features, yet his face somehow contained elements of every race and ethnicity. He wore simple robes of white, yet the fabric seemed to be woven from pure light. But it was his eyes that captured me completely. Looking into them was like gazing into eternity itself. Depths of wisdom, compassion, and understanding that transcended human comprehension. Yet at the same time, they were the most human eyes I'd ever seen, filled with warmth and even hints of humor. "You have questions," he said, not as a query, but as a simple statement of fact. "So many," I whispered. "I don't even know where to begin." "We have time," he replied, though we both knew my visit was temporary. "But perhaps we should start with the one that has burned in your heart since you were a child." "Why?" I asked, the single word containing universes of pain. "Why did you allow it all to happen? The cult, my father, my babies being taken. Where were you?" He didn't flinch from the question or offer platitudes. Instead, he held out his hands, and I saw the scars, not as faded marks, but as wounds that somehow remained both healed and open simultaneously. "I was with you," he said simply. "Every moment, every pain inflicted on you I felt. Every tear you shed, I collected. I never left you, not for an instant." "But you could have stopped it," I said, the words emerging not as an accusation but as a plea for understanding. "Yes," he acknowledged, and the honesty in his voice was both devastating and healing. "I could have, just as I could have called down legions of angels to prevent this." He indicated the scars in his hands. He turned slightly to face me more directly. "Veronica, evil exists in your world because I allow humans free will. Without the freedom to choose darkness, choosing light would have no meaning." "But children have no choice," I whispered. "Samuel had no choice. Lily had no choice." "No," he agreed, sorrow filling his voice. "They didn't, which is why I make this promise. Every injustice will be addressed. Every wrong will be made right. Not just in some abstract sense of cosmic justice, but in ways that will heal and restore every wounded heart, including yours." "When your father sacrificed your son," Jesus said quietly, "I was there." The moment before the knife fell, I took Samuel's spirit into my arms. He felt no pain, only love as I carried him home. And I have raised him here, as I promised in my word. The fatherless find a father in me. As I neared the end of the tunnel, I became aware that someone was waiting for me. A figure stood silhouetted against the radiance, and though I couldn't make out any features yet, my soul recognized him immediately. "Samuel," I whispered, though I had no physical voice. "My son, the baby who had been taken from me." the child whose sacrifice had haunted my fractured memories for decades. He stepped forward, and I saw him clearly for the first time, not as the 3-month-old infant who had died, but as a young man in his 20s. He was tall, with features that echoed my own but with his father's strong jawline. His eyes held a wisdom that transcended his apparent age. "Mom," he said, and the word contained centuries of love. I rushed toward him, or perhaps my spirit simply willed itself to him, and we embraced. The moment our souls connected, a flood of understanding passed between us. I knew, without words, that he had never suffered. Jesus had taken his spirit the moment before the knife fell. He had known only love and peace in this place. Samuel pulled back slightly, studying my face with a tender smile. "I've been waiting for this moment," he said, "but it's not your time yet." "I want to stay," I pleaded. "There's nothing for me there, just pain and broken memories." He shook his head gently. "Your story isn't finished, Mom. There are people who need to hear it, children who need the hope that only you can give them." As he spoke, images flashed before me, my 3 living children. Their faces filled with grief. Other survivors of ritual abuse, finding healing through my testimony. A ranch filled with rescued trafficking victims, playing freely in sunlit fields. Samuel took my hand and led me deeper into the light. "Before you go back, there's something you need to see." We moved together through what I can only describe as layers of heaven. Each realm we passed through was more glorious than the last, filled with light and music that seemed to transform the very substance around us. Colors I had never seen before, sounds that couldn't be heard with physical ears. Everything was alive with purpose and meaning. As we traveled, I noticed others around us, beings of light moving with joyful purpose. Some appeared human, while others had forms I couldn't comprehend. They communicated without words, exchanging thoughts and emotions directly from one consciousness to another. "Are they angels?" I asked Samuel. "Some are," he replied. "Others are people like us who have finished their earthly journey. Everyone has a purpose here, a role that perfectly matches who they were created to be." We passed through what seemed like a vast library where beings pored over books that glowed with inner light. In another area, I saw what looked like scientists and artists collaborating on creations of astonishing beauty. "There's so much happening here," I marveled. "I always imagined heaven as just worship." Samuel laughed, and the sound was like music. "Worship is in everything here, every discovery, every creation, every moment of service. It's all worship because it's all done in perfect harmony with God's nature." As we continued, I became aware of a sound growing stronger. Music unlike anything I'd heard on earth. It was simultaneously a symphony and a single perfect note. Complex and simple, ancient and new. "What is that?" I asked, drawn toward the sound. "The throne," Samuel said simply, his face alight with joy. "Would you like to see?" Before I could answer, the space around us opened up into a vast expanse that defied comprehension. Far ahead, yet somehow immediately present, was a throne of crystal-like material that emanated pure light. I could only see the lower portion, from what appeared to be shins clad in sandals, the rest obscured by swirling clouds of glory that shifted and changed with the music. The floor beneath the throne was alive with color. Not a solid surface, but millions of figures in flowing robes, moving in perfect harmony with the music. As I watched, I realized they were dancing, their movements creating patterns of light that pulsed with the rhythm of the song. "They're singing 'Shout to the Lord,'" I whispered, recognizing the worship song I had led countless times in church. "Yes," Samuel nodded. "The songs of earth echo here, but in their perfect, completed form. What you hear as a single melody on earth contains infinite harmonies in heaven." As I watched, I felt an overwhelming desire to join the worshipers. This was home. This was where I belonged. The music called to something deep within my soul, awakening memories of who I was created to be before pain and trauma had fractured my identity. "There's someone else who wants to see you," Samuel said. leading me toward a pavilion surrounded by trees with silver gold leaves. A young woman stood beneath the pavilion, her face illuminated by soft light. As we approached, I felt a shock of recognition. Though I had never seen her as an adult, I knew immediately who she was. Lily, I breathed, using the name I had given her in my heart. My daughter, the first child taken from me, smiled with tears in her eyes. "Hello, Mother." We embraced, and another flood of understanding passed between us. I saw glimpses of her life, adopted by a family outside the cult, raised with kindness but always feeling something was missing. She had died young in a car accident, but found peace and purpose in this place. "We've been watching over you," she said. "All these years, through everything." "I'm so sorry," I began, but she placed a finger gently over my lips. "There's nothing to forgive. You were a victim too. But now, you're a survivor with a testimony that will help others." As the three of us stood together, I felt a completeness I had never known on earth. These children, torn from me by evil, had been gathered up by love. They had grown and flourished in ways that would have been impossible in the broken world below. Samuel took both our hands, forming a circle. "Mom, it's almost time for you to go back. But remember this moment. Remember that we're waiting for you." Lily squeezed my hand. "Tell your story. Help the others. The darkness thrives in silence, but your voice can bring light." I wanted to protest, to beg to stay with them in this place of perfect peace. But deep down, I knew they were right. There was still work for me to do. Samuel led me back through the realms we had traversed, the glory fading slightly with each transition. As we neared what seemed to be the boundary between worlds, he stopped and turned to me. "One more thing before you go," he said, his expression serious. "The enemy will try to convince you this wasn't real, that it was just your brain creating comforting hallucinations. Don't believe those lies." "How will I know?" I asked. "How will I be sure when I'm back there, surrounded by doubts?" He smiled and placed his hand over my heart. "Because truth resonates here, beyond logic and reason. When you remember us, pay attention to what you feel in your spirit. That's how you'll know." As he spoke, I became aware of distant voices calling my name, urgent, professional voices tinged with desperation. "They're trying to bring you back," Samuel said. "It's working." "Will I see you again?" I asked, suddenly afraid. "Of course," he promised. "We have eternity ahead of us. This is just a brief separation." He embraced me one final time, and I felt myself being pulled backward, away from the light, away from my son. The tunnel reappeared, but now I was moving in the opposite direction, rushing back toward the world of pain and limitation. The last thing I heard was Samuel's voice. "Remember, Mom, your suffering has purpose. Nothing is wasted in God's economy of love." The next thing I knew, I was gasping for air as my lungs burned with each breath. The hospital room came into focus, harsh fluorescent lights, beeping monitors, and the relieved faces of medical staff. "She's back," someone said. The doctor later told me I had been clinically dead for 13 minutes and 45 seconds. They had been about to call time of death when my heart suddenly started beating again. The medical team called it a miracle. I knew it was something more. In the weeks that followed, I wrestled with how to integrate my near-death experience into my life. The memory of Samuel and Lily remained vivid, not fading like dreams do. The peace I had felt in that place stayed with me, becoming a well of strength I could draw from whenever the nightmares and flashbacks threatened to overwhelm me. My therapist helped me process the experience, neither dismissing it as hallucination nor overly spiritualizing it. Instead, she acknowledged it as part of my healing journey, a profound gift of restoration. 3 years later, I founded Restoration Ranch, a healing center for survivors of ritual abuse and trafficking. The 40-acre property provides a safe haven where shattered souls can begin to heal. We use a combination of trauma-informed therapy, art expression, equine therapy, and spiritual counseling. Every time I see a survivor reclaim their voice or witness the light return to a child's eyes, I'm reminded of Samuel's words, "Your suffering has purpose." What was meant to destroy me has instead become the foundation for helping others find their way back to wholeness. I still lead worship occasionally, though now in a small community church that understands my story and embraces the complicated reality of healing from severe trauma. When I sing about God's love, I do so as someone who has experienced the heights of heaven and the depths of hell, and found that love reaches into both. I know that one day I will see my children again, but until then, I have work to do. Every survivor who finds healing through sharing their story drives another nail into the coffin of darkness. The light always wins in the end, always.